Okay, 1 minute past 12. I think we're going to get started this afternoon. I've got a feeling there's going to be a lot of questions and a great discussion after our webinar today. So welcome along to today's Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Catalyst webinar. I'm delighted that we've got Dan Healy and Sahara Bhanot joining us today from LanthaGen Bio, who are going to tell us all about from bench to businesses lessons from building LanthaGen Bio. But first, I'll just give you a little bit of a quick intro to our Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Catalyst, IBIC. So I'm Aileen Miller. For those of you that don't know me, I am a director and lead on our project, which is EPSRC funded, one of the place-based impact acceleration account grants. We had 5 million that kicked off the program back in 2004, and we're running over a 4-year period. We are led by the University of Manchester, and our mission is to generate sort of a northwest region where industrial biotech is supercharging the growth of careers, businesses, and effectively our regional economy. All whilst delivering that low carbon or that low net new carbon economy. Our webinar series has been running for over a year now. We've got a number of our webinars all available on our YouTube channel, which is starting to stack up views. So if you are excited about what you hear today, dive back into our back catalogue, as it were. We've got lots of talks from academics. I can see Neil's talk on there from Waste to Wealth about sustainability, from setting up companies, and from why you should and how you can collaborate with businesses. So lots of things to keep you entertained and keep you informed and up to date with what's happening in biotech, and working at that triple helix boundary between academia, industry, and civic partners. But today we're going to hear from Dan and Sahara, and they're going to tell us about their journey from PhD students, and congratulations to them both. They've got their PhD, and how they took their idea and built that out through to deliver us LanthaGen Bio. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dan and Sahara, and yeah, super excited to hear what you got to tell us about your story today.
That's
Hi,
great.
everyone.
Thank you so much. Hi.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, we're super excited. It really has been a whirlwind whistle-stop tour the last couple of months. And we actually started this process with an award that Aileen delivered through Unit M. So we're really excited to show you how synthetic biology can be used as part of our mission to onshore critical metal supply. So for anyone at MIB or any of the synthetic biologists, this is going to be really exciting. And it's really exciting geopolitical time to be talking about this. So yeah, this is us. So I'll give
Hi,
this up.
maybe are you okay? We can do this, guys. So yeah, we're LanthaGen Bio, Dan and I, and we met during our PhDs and our time at the MIB. The Blue Sky mission for LanthaGen is to help countries onshore their critical mineral supply, and we're going to tell you a little bit about how we do that at LanthaGen. So if we take it back a few steps and kind of talk about why metals are so important right now, they actually always have been throughout every pinnacle and focal point throughout human civilization. So whether it was forging currencies to trade, making weapons, metals have been at the center point of kind of everything from the Bronze Age, Iron Age, to our current digital age that we find ourselves in today. So where do metals come from? Well, everyone kind of thinks of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, thinks of mining when you think about metals coming out of the ground from ores. And mining processes very much do look the same and have done for hundreds of years. The problem is now that a lot of ore grades are failing very much because we've taken out all of the value from these ores, and what we're left with is very subpar, low-grade ores. So it makes extraction even less economically viable. So the kind of pillars of the mining process are exploration, finding areas in the world where these metals are concentrated. Here in the UK, we don't really have very many mining capabilities of our own. We have a bit of lithium down south in Cornwall, but nowhere near the supply that we actually need to meet our demand and the growing demand. And then we also have extraction and separation, which is the real bottleneck in the mining process, because metals look so similar chemically that it's very difficult to distinguish between them, whether that's the properties, charge properties, and how they actually look. They are so similar. So it's like trying to separate identical twins. So where LanthaGen really began is, like the namesake, is looking at rare earth elements, which is the lanthanide row, or some of the lanthanide row of the periodic table. And the problem again with lanthanides is separating heavy and light lanthanides is extremely difficult and requires around 15 solvent-based extraction steps. That can be energy intensive and obviously has a high carbon offset as well. And so when it comes to these critical minerals, the reason why they're super important right now, and really the center of a lot of geopolitical tensions, is because 90% of the world's processed rare earth elements comes from one country, and that's China. And that's because China has the processing capabilities and the infrastructure to deal with rare earth elements and separate them and refine them. So yeah, last year, the UK spent anywhere between 203 billion 300 billion pounds on the import of critical metals. So that's including rare earth elements, but also expanded to other metals as well. That's actually more than we spend on NHS England, making it one of the biggest imports that we spent our money on last year.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
So if we look at the humble iPhone, as Sahara said, these processes are environmentally catastrophic. And I think what's really important is that even though some of these mines continue to operate and they're trying to reduce their carbon intensity, as Sahara said, these ores are rapidly degrading in the concentration of the critical metals that we need for everyday life. So in the humble smartphone, you have up to half of the periodic table. This isn't even everything that's in a smartphone. And a real interesting case is gold. So in a PCB in your mobile phone, so the printed circuit board, you can get up to 300 times the amount of gold that you would find in gold ore. So it starts to beg the question, why are we looking at mines in the earth and not starting to look at the metals that we already have, potentially in our own waste streams? This is the reality of these metals. So the BBC done a big report last year. So for every 1 ton of rare earth elements processed in these mines, we're still getting 2,000 tons of toxic waste. Now, thankfully, the UK government is catching up. So they have set out their first ever critical mineral strategy. And this is great for synthetic biologists because our thoughts are, can we use the power of biology to untap this, what we call urban mine? So rather than going to the Congo, and there's other issues as well, such as slavery and the use of forced labour, how can we onshore the critical metal supply to the UK using our vast urban mine? This is a collection of photos that Sahara took from multiple of her friends, and we call it the drawer of shame. So this is all the waste you have at home, and to be honest, there's untapped potential in all of these. So your mobile phones, you have gold, you have loads of platinum group metals, you have lanthanum, you have all the rare earth elements that you could possibly need. And it's really time that we started to untap this waste source. So the current recycling rate, despite all of this, and despite the fact that you have 300 times the amount of gold that a gold mine would ever have, is 1%. Which is really shocking, especially when you think of the circular bioeconomy. that institutions like Liverpool University and MIB at the University of Manchester are putting forward. We have projects in circular biomanufacturing, we have bioplastic degradation, but we're still only recycling 1% of our metals, despite the fact that you get 2,000 times the toxic waste out of the process as you do the metal. And for once, the UK is actually a leader. This is one of the highest in Europe. Germany is actually only 0.5%. So yeah, this is crucial. And Sahara and myself and our other co-founder, Ellie, have come up with a solution, or part of the solution.
So enter the humble microbe. I won't have to explain too much to this audience what microbes are and where they're found. But essentially, the premise here is that microbes have been evolving for billions of years, and they have evolved pathways and adapted to and have pathways to transport and transform metals in an environment. So if we're talking about within rocks, you can actually form microbial communities that are able to withstand these high metal environments that wouldn't be able to survive any other microbes or any other life forms, essentially. And so basically what we can learn from these pathways that have naturally evolved and really capitalize on what nature can already do. So our solution at LanthaGen Bio is all based on what we call our biomagnet technology. Obviously, for the biologists in the room, it's not magnetic, it's affinity based, and it's a suite of engineered proteins and peptides that we use that naturally have 10 billion times more attraction. And this is originally started with rare earth elements, so we're using the case study of rare earths here, but had 10 billion times more attraction to rare earth metals over other contaminants in ores, mining waste, such as iron. With our proof of concept, really at the start, we used a lot of open source computational tools that really allowed us to kind of turn our Friday night project into an idea and go from that to proof of concept, and then allow us to get the next tranche of funding, which Dan will tell you a little bit more about later on. But using these computational tools, we were able to identify a suite of biomagnets that were able to separate heavy and light rare earth elements. The great thing here is, as you know, these proteins are optimized for function in water. So when we're really negating the use of these 15 plus solvent-based extraction steps, so that helps kind of the later downstream separation processes as well. And so what's really important as a company, it's quite important to note really that we incorporated in August last year. We are a very young company. And so traction at the early stages is everything. And in that short period of time, I have to say we've achieved quite a lot. So everything started with our first philanthropic award from Unit M, which was the Ideas with Impact Award, which we'll tell you a little bit more about. And we are huge fans because it's really these early equity-free pots of funding that allow you to turn your ideas into something tangible, something more feasible, and get you on the ladder to, you know, have that knock-on effect and see all of these other opportunities kind of come knocking. Our most notable equity-free funding to date is from Spring D in Germany. So it's a German federal fund, and we were awarded 1.21 million. It's a gated funding challenge, so it has upwards of 6 million provided over 3 years, subject to us meeting certain milestones. We also have quite a few partnerships now. So we've got Elemental Hub. So we've got 2 postdocs on the go as well that LanthaGen are partnering with at the moment. So job creation is a massive part of everything going forward, and we'll talk a bit more to that shortly. Other doors that have opened since then, I was able to join the Science Creates Accelerator, which is a VC-backed accelerator based down in Bristol, and it's incredible. And this is one of the things that I would say to anyone that is out there, kind of looking to turn their ideas and actually start an impactful, meaningful business. I guess it's the knowledge that you can get coming out of academia to really translate your skills in academia as a biologist, as a scientist, and show yourself that you have the skills already there that are necessary to build a company from the ground up. Other doors that this kind of initial funding opened meant that Dan and I were able to go to Quebec to start scoping markets and appetites for the adoption of engineering biology approaches in a very historic male-dominated field like mining. So as you can imagine, places in the world which have been historically mining for hundreds of years are not really open to adopting new ideas, let alone two people coming in very young and saying, well, biology can do all of the stuff that you need. So really scoping out the global appetite is a hugely important part of getting people to adopt our technology as a whole. We have since then sent our other co-founder, Ellie, to Australia. So she's managed to scope some of the market there and form some very meaningful collaborations. From the market visit, it meant that we were in the room with policymakers, so the Department of Business and Trade, and we were actually invited by to Parliament for a critical minerals networking event. So actively engaging at policymakers on a high level while they're creating these new critical mineral strategies is super important. In the same week that I passed my Viva, we actually pitched to Sprind to receive our equity-free funding, and that was probably the highest point of my life so far. Hopefully it's not all downhill from here, but what this funding has essentially allowed us to do is rapidly accelerate our R&D. We can now afford our own labs, we can afford infrastructure like legal, accounting, finance teams, and really has given us the money to scope out the kind of patent space so that we can actually generate some meaningful novel IP. We've spoken at so many conferences in the past few months. I think we were at home for 4 days in November, and travel is a huge part of it. So being willing to make that sacrifice and actively going out and showing your face at as many conferences as possible to get that early traction is a huge part of what we're doing at this point.
So
I'll let Dan talk about it.
I think for us, something that I'm going to talk about is accessibility in a second in my background, but I think that building this landscape, so we're based currently at Sister, which is just across from Manchester Institute of Biotechnology, and I think what's like really groundbreaking about this space, on top of the fact that it's built sustainably, it's fully accessible, which is fantastic. It has a network of budding startups. So you get to meet people who will apply for things like Ideas with Impact. As a quick shout out, there is a social mixer on the 22nd of April for the next tranche of funding. So I really hope that some new innovators are going to come to that. But it's really building that network. Which, I mean, it's really transformational in terms of having support. I think something that's really big in ecosystem building is you are going to get a lot of information that you have to bat away. So for us, raising equity too early, raising equity too late, applying for this grant, going to this building, but just having that mentorship, because it can, when you start out, just feel like maybe you're fresh out of your PhD or your degree, like you're like a tiny fish in a huge pond. So having that network, that opportunity to network with people that are going through exactly what you're going through is so important. It's actually sort of helped us pivot into our new lab space, specifically because it's attached to an ecosystem.
Yeah, I think, I'll go back onto Sister a little bit
Of
more.
course,
We're
yeah.
going quite fast through that. So Sister, I don't know if everyone is aware of that, but it's the old Renault building that has been kind of retrofitted to form a new ecosystem in Manchester. And Sister's a really special place, I think, especially personally, because I did my first ever exam, Chem 101, way back in 2016 in Sister, which was then Renault. And it was, a time of a horrendous experience. It was the worst exam I've ever sat, and I was ready to quit chemistry at that point, and glad I didn't, because now it's where we call home. Dan is sat there currently, and as Dan mentioned, the ecosystem it's incredible. It's not really the end-to-end support, but it's those conversations that you have when you're having lunch, just randomly, like over a coffee or over drinks, that someone knows someone who knows someone, and it's a knock-on effect of that. Also being in a place that is super supportive, and it just really, it makes you feel a lot more comfortable in a space that can be quite lonely oftentimes. So yeah, I had Liz and the team from Sister come and support me when I was doing my TED talk, and it's just small stuff like that that really makes a huge difference, I think.
Massively. Like even that, just having like the head of an institute be so invested in like the work we're doing, it's just amazing. And it is dog friendly, so Sahara is able to bring her lovely dog to work, which is great.
That's a very key point.
So we want to give you some quite concrete, like where do we look for funding, because, and feel free when we bring that slide up to take photos, etc., because it can be really hard to access that information, and it's a lot easier when you're in the network. So we have a full slide on that. But we do need to give some hard facts on what the landscape does look like currently, and how can we build out of this. So we're a female and queer founded team. We're majority female. To all female teams, only 2.3% of equity VC in the world goes to them, which is insane considering the fact that the return is often higher with a female founding team. It's crazy that angel investments, so that they can typically be smaller investments, only 5.4% of them go to female-led businesses. And I think what's quite scary about that is they're often the first investments or equity that a company will take. As a global majority female-led company, only 0.24% of VC funded went to Black founders, and only 8% with ethnic minority founders as well. So it's just showing you that gap, and the fact that these ecosystems, not only are they good for our business and our own personal development, they also help us network and build up resilience. As a queer founder as well, these statistics don't necessarily shock me, but I think as well it's important to be visible as well as doing your science, because there might be other founders that they might have commonalities with you. 75% of queer founders actually hide their identity from investors, which is just not the ecosystem that we want to build. We want to ensure that everyone can bring both their talent and themselves to investment rounds, and we really need to be part of the change that brings that. So a bit sobering, but there are opportunities for equity-free funding that can help shift this. From my own, this is a very personal perspective, but I think it's really important to talk about the role of STEM in social mobility. So for myself, I come from the most deprived constituency, not just in Northern Ireland, but the whole island. Yeah, the statistics in terms of educational attainment and employment opportunities differ significantly from somewhere, say, like the South East. So I think there's a huge amount of commonalities when we're looking at the Northwest and increasing opportunity here. We always have in mind that we want to create jobs that are equitable, paid well, and give people a sense of purpose. Yeah, when I looked at the statistics, I knew that the gap was big, but I didn't necessarily think that for those that are aiming towards managerial, professional, academic careers, there's an 80% gap. So I think what's really important is that STEM can be a tool for social mobility. You've double the double the percentage opportunity coming from a STEM background to achieve a degree of social mobility. I think this is really important that we use our business for good, and also that synthetic biology becomes more accessible. Myself and Sahara come from from the University of Manchester, where we're lucky to be able to publish our papers in open access journals. You have loads of software that's open access as well, and this just ensures that synthetic biology is for everyone, and that these opportunities to build companies and startups like we're doing are for everyone. Sahara mentioned that those tools that we used initially, they were just open source tools, and that can often sound quite vague when a big company, maybe in the States or elsewhere, they've built this crazy AI program and raised millions of pounds. That's not the reality for most companies, but you can absolutely use these open source tools to advance your science, and you don't have to spend a huge amount of money, which is so, so important to us. So I think this is the slide that I think it's just so important that as founders, and now that we are getting access to a lot of these opportunities, that we share these with you and that we tell you you should go for it. If that means that you have built a platform that you're really excited about on open access software, that might be time to go for it. With Ideas with Impact, we were at a very early stage. So, as we said, we were using, open source tech to really develop our idea. And then using that funding, we were able to accelerate that into the lab and multiply our initial investment by 18 times. So it's not always, it can feel at the minute in the economic circumstance that we find it in, that there's not a huge amount of opportunity, but we want to tell you that there are some, and we would be more than willing to chat to anyone who's excited about these. So Ideas with Impact, the pre-sign-ups are open. So really excited to see some new teams. We were one of the earliest teams to really enter that competition, and we went up against some amazing giants and still came away with some equity-free cash. So yeah, anyone wants to reach out, we're going to leave our email at the end, because these opportunities, they can really turn into, an over £1 million grants.
I think it's also important there to note, I'll put in, so accelerators here are super key. So I was lucky enough to be part of Science Creates cohort 3, which is an engineering biology specific cohort, but there are so many accelerators and incubators out there that can often be a bit overwhelming when deciding which one's best for you or your company at the time. What we really looked for is something that was equitable for me as a person going on the course as well. So what Science Creates gave me was a stipend top up that actually allowed me to do it, because a lot of the bottleneck is having funding for yourself. At that stage, I was writing up my PhD thesis. My funding had stopped from uni, and so I wouldn't be able to have done the accelerator, traveling down to Bristol, etc., every few weeks if they didn't have a stipend to pay me. So it really is what is best for your company and yourself at the time, and make sure you're not bootstrapping your way through a lot of these accelerators when there is funding available. So make the most of what's out there. It's super key, because that can be a huge bottleneck, and it's totally inaccessible oftentimes. Another thing to be quite wary of is some of these accelerators and incubators take equity from the company, and it's in very fine print, and it's not always a bad thing, and it's not about a red flag if they do, but just make sure that you are in a position where that is right for your company, and you can kind of forecast how that will look in your next funding round, and how that will reflect on you as a company when you come to liaising with investors in the future. So it's all kind of important things to consider, but I mean, it might sound really obvious, but at early stages, when you're getting a lot of information thrown at you, the last thing you're thinking is, oh, this accelerator takes 3% equity. That doesn't sound like very much, but it can have a knock-on effect in the future. So you have to just make sure that is the right time for you to be handing out equity.
That's just you're just so right, because I think that stipend, we wouldn't have been able at that point for you to attend Science Creates without it. And they also attend the Manchester Institute of Biotech. I think it's every other year as part of the Biotech Roadshow. So you can go and meet Sahara's colleagues down at Science Creates, talk about the accelerator, mention Sahara. And yeah,
I don't know if that'd be a good or a bad thing, to be honest, but you can mention me. That's just one of the great accelerators out there, but there are many. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for those.
So last from us, feel free to take a photo of this as well. There's so many benefits to doing an independent startup, and then also for doing a university spin out. So I think really agility is probably the biggest thing you get with an independent startup. Me and Sahara would very much be we don't come from families who are going to be able to give us hundreds of thousands of pounds for equipment. So we're not people who would ever advise what we call bootstrapping, i.e. funding it yourself. We always say, if there's funding, go for it. But I think that, that goes for university and independent startups, but ensure that, yeah, you have something to keep yourself going, because I suppose the drawback is that at a university spin out, you get access to things like the TTO, the patent office, you might even get a lab space as well. So yeah, I think it's hugely important. The same again goes with finding IP and IP assignment. Just make sure you've dotted your I's, crossed your T's, make sure you know what you're getting into. I would say, despite again, down talking of the economic situation, the UK is probably the best place in Europe to start up. There's so many benefits. It's very easy to register your company. And I mean, that's just the start, but it's a lot easier than some of our neighbours, which we're fighting when we travel to Germany. There's lots of schemes such as R&D tax credits, where you can get up to 27% back of any spend directly in R&D, and that includes staff payments. So yeah, something to keep in mind. And you can also fuse these two together, so you can be a startup or spin out and collaborate with industry, or if you're an independent startup, you can do things like IBICs and development funds if you need that extra project or that little bit extra expertise. So yeah, we would be considered a startup. So yeah, we have really had to ensure that we do everything like in our lab space. Again, thank you, Aileen, who pointed out some local lab space in Manchester. So yeah, it's just two different paths. And again, feel free to ask us about your particular situation at any time.
So yeah, I guess we'll go back to the beginning and where it all started with us. We were actually at an IBIC conference. We haven't been paid to plug IBIC so much, but we were actually at the IBIC conference in Liverpool, and we were very much discussing where we could apply our skill set and form an impactful company. So it ended up being kind of our side project, our Friday night project, which sounds a bit wishy-washy, but it very much was in our spare time, which there isn't much of when you're doing a PhD. But Dan, Ellie, and I were in active discussions also with Chris Field as well. And we were seeing what was going around in the world geopolitically. We were seeing where we could apply our knowledge. We've all got backgrounds in microbial engineering for various things, whether it be extremophiles, E. coli for therapeutics, biofuels, or plastic degradation. And we saw this gap in the market when it came to metal recovery and remining. And we also saw such amazing research coming out of institutions all around biology for recovery of metals. And so naturally we kind of set down that path and essentially saw where it led us, and where it did lead us, it has been where we are today. And it's been incredibly a huge learning curve, I guess. And so now our team, with our sprint funding, with our traction, has grown significantly. We've all, at an early stage of a startup, we all kind of wear the role CXO, where everyone is doing each other's roles. And so recently, Dan, Ellie, and I have all done a role swap. So my role is now CEO, Dan's is CTO, and Ellie's is CSO. And what this means is not very much at this stage, except that I lead very much on the business development side of things. Who knew that was a full-time job? We didn't certainly realize how intense it can be to go out, scope markets, meet customers, and constantly interacting and interfacing with potential investors. Every conversation we have at this stage can lead somewhere extremely meaningful, so we're very mindful of that. And so where it's led us is to find our incredible employees, Chris and Madhuri, and they really encompass the skill set that we don't have as founders, and that's super important of your first hires. They are very self-motivated, very driven, and very eager to be part of something that is being built from the ground up. So all of their research is extremely foundational to any IP we generate, anything that we do. Working for a startup is often quite difficult. There's a lot of uncertainty, and there's various sprints to meet targets and grant applications, etc. And it can be difficult. It's not your average 9 to 5, but what it is extremely rewarding. You get the opportunity to drive a little bit more of your research, and you really shape the company from its initial foundations and build it to what it can be. With Science Creates as well, with Science Creates and Sprint, we've met a lot of amazing mentors throughout and had the opportunity to meet some amazing people. And Kerry is one of them. She's worked at DARPA for many years, and specifically in the biology sector, and her wealth of knowledge and connections over in the US has been transformational for us. We also have a host of other mentors, which we wouldn't necessarily have had access to if we hadn't gone on some of these amazing programs. So it's all about the connections that you make, the people that you meet, and really building out your own ecosystem from the ground up.
Yeah. I would say as well, Sahara has just really taken on the business development side, and there's a huge side to that, that you may have queries such as you're building things like data rooms and yeah, market scoping. Every time we have conversations now, what I love is you always say, how does that scale? How does it scale? And it is a skill set you like PhDs and scientists do have innately that just needs additional training, which is why I just think that accelerator was transformational.
That's so important what you've just said there, because what we started with was a very naive understanding of what it was to build a business, build a successful company, and what is success. Everyone measures it differently, but every key milestone and inflection point that we reach, we kind of pat ourselves on the back and we think, that is brilliant, because 6 months ago we didn't think we had any of the skills. We thought we needed an MBA on our team, and actually everyone that is a scientist or is an academic has these skills, inherently carries out all of these skills on a daily basis. You're collaborating, you're forward thinking, you're constantly innovating. There's so much that you're already naturally doing that you can very much capitalize on, and it's just the way that you spin it or tweak it that kind of puts you in the more businessy side of things, I guess. So yeah, we definitely have the skill sets. Everyone is able to do this. It's just a matter of kind of bringing out that confidence, I think.
Absolutely. And even when we talk to academics now, because we're looking at partnerships, sometimes they're like, yeah, I've never thought of scaling, and it's so interesting to meet people who are so highly skilled in their field, and like it's new to them as well. So yeah, I would say, if Sahara is if someone like Sahara can both do their Viva and also go for sprint in the same week, then hopefully some of the
We can all
innovators
do
out
it.
there. Yeah.
We can all do
Not-
it. Let's just say that.
But yeah,
So we're very keen to give back to kind of the community and the people that have helped shape us as a company and make us who we are today. So any questions, no matter how big or small, there's no such thing as a stupid question. We always say that's what our board meetings and our group meetings are like.
Yeah.
We are very happy to take any questions and support and advise in any way that we can. Obviously, we're not experts, and everyone's journey is completely different. So going back to the point Dan made about weeding out what's relevant and what's not, what good information is and what's not quite right there, it's a skill that you kind of pick up along the way for sure. I think we've become experts in that.
Yeah, we're getting there, definitely. Yeah.
We're getting there. Thank
But
you very
yeah,
much.
any questions? And thank you so much for your time today.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much. It's amazing to think that like 12 months ago, it was just still an idea in the back of your minds and just kind of a side desk project. So kudos and congrats for getting so far in 12 months, and yeah, look forward to see where the next 12 months take you. So any questions from anybody, please feel free to pop your hand up and or pop a message into the chat and we can read it out, but please don't be shy, pop your hand up and go for it. Anyone looking for some nuggets of advice? I'll ask a question in terms of the funding, you got and the funding journey you went on, two things. Well, one question, but probably applied to 2 time points. What made you take the plunge and apply in the first place for ideas with impact? And I guess the same question for the Spring D application, because it's a big fund and opportunity. So what was it that got you to put pen to paper and apply to both of those things?
I'll let Dan take ideas of impact and I'll talk on sprint. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so yeah, it was very much I know we use that term quite a lot. We say, you know, it was a Friday afternoon project, but it was something we were very passionate about, which was using our synthetic biology skills to a new problem, or a problem that is very old and needs new solutions. And I think for us, it was a really opportune time when we started to look at the geopolitical crisis around rare earth elements, the huge environmental and, the catastrophic environmental impacts of rare earth elements as covered by the BBC. I think for me, and it might just be, a core value, I think, of the founding team for us. I really liked with the ideas with impact. The whole application was on what is, like, it was every question, it was what is the actual impact, not just what is this exercise in exploring your research at a basic level. It's how is it going to do X, Y, Z. And for us, I even chose my PhD because it was attached to an industry biotech support. And I've always wanted it to translate into something that has a tangible output, such as carbon reduction. And for me, this was an opportunity for us to use our skill set, do something that we're so deeply passionate about, and also address something that was so critical. I love the fact that there was no restrictions on who can apply. So it wasn't you have to be an early stage career researcher with tenure, or some of these more, there's some more restrictions on some of the government funded programs. I think that's so important because there are ideas all across, the University of Manchester campus, across the Northwest, and they don't often get, opportunities to develop those. So yeah, I think funds like that can be transformational, and that's why we went for it.
Excellent.
And really, the reason why we went for sprint is from the confidence that we got from ideas with impact.
Yeah.
Because we realized we could be a small fish in a big pond. Some of the people we went up against at IWI were, incredible and had been established for a very long time. But sometimes it is about the market as it stands and what's going on currently and what's more politically charged and what's more globally relevant, and the space that we're in the critical mineral space is super relevant right now, and it won't go away. It has been for a long time, but it's very much reaching its pinnacle because a lot of governments are turning their attention to defense technologies, and obviously you need these metals for the green transition as well. So a super interesting time to be working on that. Another reason why we went for sprint is because we were told we wouldn't get it, and that's the same for a lot of things that we've achieved so far. We've been met with adversity in kind of everything that we've done. We've been told, when we got our initial funding, that that's not going to get you very far, or you're never going to get onto the next tranche, or what are you going to do with that? Like, that's not going to get you to the next spine point or milestone. And actually, that's complete rubbish. So we're living proof of the fact that people are going to tell you no, or you can't do something, or you can't achieve something all the time. And it's what you do with that information, whether you let it kind of knock you back or whether you use it as motivation. And as cheesy as that sounds, that's genuinely the reason why we went for Spring D, because otherwise we'd be put off. It's huge numbers. Being a company, still retaining our equity and having over $1 million in grant funding, that's more than a lot than we would ask for in a pre-seed investment round. So we are very fortunate to have won it. But a question's come through that's asking how we found out about Spring D, and we're happy to share the website link, or if you have a quick Google. We knew other people in the competition that had won previous grants from Sprint, one of them being someone that we went up against at IWI. So that's kind of where we heard of Spring D Challenge, and we thought, wow, this is too good to be true. And it definitely does sound too good to be true, but it is German government funding. We didn't know if we were eligible. We looked it up. We went to Berlin because we had money from IWI, and we were able to go and actually meet the spring team face to face. And we knew that they wanted to fund very disruptive technology and very disruptive teams, and we very much sit at the forefront of both of those things. So what they do is release very specific challenges. Our specific one was Tech Metal Transformation Challenge, but they also release various other challenges and sectors in life sciences, in health tech, med tech, all across to AI at the moment as well. So definitely keep an eye on the challenges that they publish.
I will also send to IBIC, because I know that was just like a slide, but I have a list of all the open, very early stage. And yeah, feel free to share them because yeah, they're great. Of course, ideas with impact. We want everyone to go for that fund.
Yeah.
And
We're
yeah,
biased.
I think something Sahara said there is just so funny. I completely forgot. The reason we were able to go to a preliminary meeting with Sprint was the Ideas with Impact funds. I think Alien actually approved our flights. So
Yeah, the day before. Thank you.
yeah. So yeah, it's yeah, as Sahara said, like small, and us, I don't think 75 felt small at all. It felt huge to us,
No.
but pots like that, yeah, they do leave the groundwork. And there's ways and means. If you want to stay at a postdoc, you can hire someone as a postdoc. We worked with Oxford Expression Technologies, who done some high throughput assays and was very good value. And that can be a really good way to get some initial data if you are someone who loves using open source tools, such as myself. Um, there's so many ways to just get your technology across that what they call technical readiness level, so that investors have that confidence in you. So yeah, I would say if you have an idea, a lot of these initial funds that were on the left side of the slide, they'll take an idea with that has, of course, some grounding. It has to, some sort of scientific logic. But yeah.
So
I think
we've a question from Gordon Hamilton, who says, congratulations on your success, really great enthusiasm. I'm interested to know what stage your IP was at before applying for the very early stage funding.
We were so early.
Yeah, we were very early. What we did have was an awareness of what patents were out in the space that we were engineering into. So that's very important. I think that's the key to success in such a saturated space. So just having an awareness of your competitors, people that have already put out patents, both here in the UK and globally, and just be aware. Use a lot of patent searching databases. I'm sure Dan and I can share some of that information as well with IBIC when we send out the list of funds as well. So these are just great little databases and tools that you can look at. But for us personally, we didn't have any IP to put down. We were literally at the brink of engineering our first hits that we thought would be our first filing of IP. We had to pivot a few times actually because we realized that a lot of the patents did encroach on the space that we were in. So be ready to pivot. Don't hold on to your idea as it is and hope that that's going to be your final iteration. It's definitely going to have to pivot, especially in the space that we're in when it's engineering proteins, engineering peptides. So we were at TRL three?
Three, yeah.
When we applied for IWI. So yeah, we're now moving up between 4 and 5 and testing our technology in a lab and with real life samples. But yeah, we were extremely early stages when we first applied.
And I think as well, it can sound quite intimidating starting to look at the patent space because, of course, we're not patent lawyers, but ECBI, the European BLAST, I will give the actual link, has a patent searching tool. So if you're a biologist who uses sequences, you can get a general idea if your idea is, if Pfizer has a big, you'll not be able to get the ins and outs of it, but it gave us enough idea that when we actually went to a patent attorney, they told us, yeah, you're right, your pivot was a very good idea. And some tools that can be really useful. I'm not saying stay away from ChatGPT. It can be very useful. I find Perplexity a bit more comprehensive and a bit better for a system with science. It it gets residues and everything mixed up. So there always has to be a scientist on board to check it. But yeah, and there's also funds as well. They can give you free legal support. So say you're a scientist who isn't quite ready to take that leap. There's small other funds. We actually applied to one and didn't get it. So there's something we didn't get. So yeah, there's lots of funds and we'll send them ahead. I think as long as you have a sensible idea, TRL3 that you've some backing on, you're probably ready to start looking at some of these funds.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Oh, there's another question. Did you have to be careful about disclosure? Gordon's asking as a follow-on.
Oh, yes. So it really depends who you're talking to. What you will find strange is that not to simplify it, but if you go to fundraise with a VC and you ask them for NDAs, like everything locked up, they'll just laugh at you because at that stage they'll say you're so early that you know, have you really proven your proof of concept? On the flip side of that, any company you're talking to, a basic NDA template online. Ensure that it's not bulletproof, but ensure to protect yourself. We have a template we'd be more than happy to share because there are competitors in this area that would love some of the proteins we're working on. And not to like sidestep too quickly, another thing to note on that is that competition isn't always bad. So we have had, when we were talking to our patent attorney and other people, a lot of people are very worried that there's, you know, 2 or 3 players in the space. Sometimes fundraisers like that there's competition. If you're in a market that's so niche that there's no customer, that can be a huge issue as well. But yeah, be very careful with disclosure. If you're in a university setting, it's very different. So if it's part of a postdoctoral project, you absolutely have to go to a TTO and disclose it with them, and they can give you advice on if you should advance it or what you should do with that. PhD students can, depending on their project, have different terms, but I would say if you're in a university and it's related to your research, go to your TTO. Yeah.
Perfect. And I was just going to add actually on the TTO conditions, normally when you are spin out, certainly the University of Manchester and most other universities across the UK are the same now because they're developing and aligning with 10U guidelines that came out a year or so ago. That typically if you're an experimental deep tech lab based type projects, then they take around 20% of equity, the TTO. The rest is with the founding team, and if it's software, it's typically 10%.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah.
That's okay. Good to hear that. That's great. Good to hear.
Okay, so I think we're going to draw a line there, but we want to thank you guys very much for sharing your journey, so the highs, which have been many, and it's great to see that those are starting to continue, but also being open and honest about some of the difficulties and challenges and things that you've tried to do, apply for and not got them, because normally it's always the positives you hear. You don't hear about all the 10 failures that go before that to get to the one positive. And sometimes
Absolutely.
building that resilience is part of the journey as well. And I think Jacob would really appreciate that sharing the list of the different funding opportunities.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now, I think we've got our upcoming webinar series. The next webinar in a month's time, on the 23rd of April, is with the Medicines Discovery Catapult. So they'll talk about what support they can give in terms of de-risking scientific innovation. So QR code is on there. Hopefully you've scanned that already and starting to register as we're talking. And just to thank everyone very much for joining today. I hope to see you at this session at the Unit M launch of the next Ideas with Impact program. So who are you going to be one of those people in 12 months' time coming to give a webinar to tell us about the journey that maybe an Ideas with Impact award has catalysed? Also, we've got our 5 funding categories and awards through the Industrial Biotech Catalyst, all the way from building out network. If you want to put on an event, we've got money to help and support you with that. Secondments to businesses, working to collaborate with businesses, but most appropriate, following on this talk, is our commercial development fund, so up to 50k to help get you to your next milestone, whether that be sort of lab-based, whether it more critically be building out your business plan, getting in some external support to help you shape your idea to move towards an investable proposition, or take some time out to go join one of these excellent game-changing accelerator programs that we've heard about today. So have a look at that. The next deadline is the 11th of June. So look forward to seeing applications. Thank you very much, Dan and Sahara. Excellent to hear your journey today, and look forward to staying in touch. QR code here, and lovely to see everyone. Thanks.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
See you again.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks both. Good luck later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.